PVE Rising is out and complete, and the game is incredibly well put together. One of the best vampire games I've ever played, and one of the best games I've played, period. It may not be for everyone, as there's basically no story, but the controls are tight, the UI is pristine, and the castles you can build are pretty dang impressive. There are a bunch of guides on how to make the perfect PvP castle in PVE Rising, but this isn't that video. I want to share with you some tips, 10 tips, on how to make the best looking castle in PVE Rising so you can construct the gothic citadel of your dreams. Before we get started, do note that this is primarily aimed at the PvE crowd, as base raiding, if enabled on the server you play on, may require specific castle building strategies that don't look so hot. I am here to offer aesthetics, not min-maxing the best castle defense. Nothing against PvP, and I do enjoy it, but these tips may not be all that applicable to it. Similarly, this isn't going to show you how to maximize your efficiency in resource processing. In fact, it may make it a little bit more difficult. One last thing before we start. The default floor height limit, how high you can build, is set to 3 floors, which isn't a whole lot. To get the most out of your castle building experience, playing on your own server is recommended, as you can bump up the limit to the engine max of 6. You can also get all of the resources possible, which just accelerates your building efforts. I haven't played on the public servers since release, so do be aware that your experience may be different from mine. Now, let's get started. First thing, do not get attached to your first castle, as you will likely move it. If you are a new player to PVE Rising, the game's progression on the map is something like south to north, so your low-tier materials and enemies are in the south, while stronger enemies and more vital resources are in the north, broadly speaking. Don't worry if you didn't get the best possible starting location. Roll with it, you can relocate your castle later as you need to. Another alternative is to immediately rush to your chosen plot in wolf form if you already kinda know what you're doing, and not worry about relocating later. While nothing is stopping you from doing this, the entire map is open, other than stronger enemies in areas you're trying to get to. If you are playing on public servers, someone may already have a castle built in your perfect spot, and there may be very little you can do about it other than finding somewhere else to build. Second tip, piggybacking from the first tip. Don't start decorating your castle until you're somewhere around endgame, like Act 4, because the way the game works is that you unlock more and more unique castle customization options as you progress. There isn't really a good reason to decorate early on, as you will probably swap locations or change your mind about the decor later on anyway. While it's something you can do almost right away, it may be, quite frankly, a waste of time to decorate. This castle that I'm building now is almost fully laid out, but decorations are sparse because I haven't actually got to them. Ideally, you want to plan completely out what you're gonna do and construct all of the possible floors before you ever decorate. Tip 3. You do not need 2 castles. Some servers don't even allow you to have 2 castles, but the default is 2. This may cause some confusion for newer players, especially since the game doesn't really explain this. All of your castles, if you can build more than one, are unique and mutually exclusive. You cannot connect them together, share resources or servants, or really do anything like that. If you want to have a really dope castle, stick to just building one, it's all you need. However, if you want another castle, one good reason for having a secondary, like in terms of aesthetics especially, is, for example, you see in this video, you want to give them the illusion that your castles are somehow connected, but not really. In this case, my secondary castle is like a large hedge garden or mausoleum. Tip number 4. Staircase placement is probably the most important decision you will make when it comes to designing your castle. Always have at least 2 separate staircases leading up to your floor. Stairs are very annoying to move or replace, and if you have only one per floor, it cannot be altered at all unless all floors connected to it are dismantled, or you place another staircase to that same floor. As far as choices go, if you have the basic stone stairs, ebonite stairs, which are slightly fancier, and the wooden stairs that look the least threatening, you basically have all of the stairs and you're set. For the design itself though, angled stairs look very nice when placed on the outermost edges of your castle, so they wrap around it, while straight stairs are great for the inside of the castle itself. One thing you may want to consider doing is exposing your stairs. That is, not encasing them in walls or putting a roof over them, as proper layering can produce a very nice result. There's still the sun to worry about, but if you build high enough, you can overcome this with balconies or smart placement. Speaking of balconies, tip number 5. Balconies are a great way to create a unique castle design. My recommendation is to have at least one floor buffer when creating an overhang and not going over one tile distance without using support struts. Consider layering your balconies asymmetrically, creating overhang walkways and so on to vary your castle design. If you're going for the Dracula's castle sort of vibe, like I am, don't skimp out on the balconies. You can also make interior balconies, which I recommend placing only when they enhance the room in some way. It's pretty easy to get them wrong and they can just end up looking weird or awful. Don't forget support struts is tip number 6. I realize that you're making a magical vampire castle and gravity doesn't matter, especially when it comes to building floors, but if you don't create support struts, the whole thing will look fake and uninspired. Support struts do what they apply, which is give support to whatever is placed on top of them, and architecturally you want to place them where it makes the most sense. Now, you don't want to go too crazy with support struts everywhere, it just makes it look busy, as breaking away from this can also work, but if you have a large overhang, consider adding struts so it's more plausible versus just having it be magically up there somehow. Tip number 7. Don't make your rooms super huge. Break them down. Make sure you're using as much space as you need to. There may be a reason to have a large room, but you generally want to break rooms down into smaller chunks, more strategic use of space available to you, and so forth. This mostly applies to refining stations since there's quite a few of them. A good general rule to follow when it comes to room size is if the room makes good use of all the available corners without feeling too cramped or too spacious, you're in a good place. And as far as refining stations go, you do unlock some upgraded varieties later on which may affect room size. If you want my opinion, I think 2 refined stations are generally plenty enough outside of smelters. Smelting metal is pretty important in the game, so I would recommend having 3 or more and planning for a little bit more space for your furnaces. My 8th tip, strive for symmetry but also break it constantly. I know, sounds paradoxical, but what I mean is that if your castle is entirely symmetrical, it's boring. On the flip side, if nothing in your castle is symmetrical, it will look chaotic and disorganized. I strive for a mix where individual rooms are mostly symmetrical, but the overall design is asymmetrical. This is more or less how castles should look. Take this gate for example. It doesn't align properly with the entrance ramp, so one solution is to move it over to where it doesn't align with the ramp at all, but instead looks more centered to the overall castle structure. But now I have a different problem. The gate is 2 tiles wide, but the walkway it faces is 3 tiles wide. The solution is to add some strategic fencing to make it look more symmetrical and aligned. 9th, almost to the end. Use wallpaper to enhance your room design, but save it for the very end. Wallpaper filling can be a bit of a pain depending on how you have your room set up, and it can mess up your interior decorating. Plus, every new wall you add or change will reset the default wallpaper of that wall. It is generally safe to shift fill external walls of your castle, and I would recommend keeping your castle outer walls consistent for all floors, though in my case the 6th floor has a different design, simply because I thought it looked cool. I may change my mind about this later, but the best looking castle is going to be visually consistent externally. It is perfectly okay to have unique room wallpaper and so on, and when doing individual rooms you should be fine shift filling, but I've had it mess up before with internal balconies. So generally what I would recommend is if you're making internal rooms with wallpaper, use manual fill just to be safe so it doesn't mess up everything else. Last tip, don't cook too hard. Design with a purpose. It can get pretty overwhelming crafting that one super castle of your dreams, but it is okay for it to be imperfect and a work in progress. Don't try to throw absolutely everything you can into the design. That can come off as too busy or way too much. In this castle that I'm building in the video, I'm struggling using all of the floors I have available to me since I made a conscious design decision to leave a part of the castle open. Adding too much to that will just ruin the original effect I was trying to create. So yeah, the best looking castle is the one that has a design purpose, so have a design purpose and stick to it. And that's all I got for you, 10 tips on how to make the best looking castle in V Rising. Love to hear your feedback, maybe you have some of your own tips to share. I'd also like to make more V Rising content, for example, the best looking places to put a castle in or some such. So do let me know if that's something you want to see. That's it for this video though, hope you found it helpful, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.